You already know these moves. That is the part nobody says out loud, but it is the truth that makes this essay different from every other piece of financial content you have encountered. You know you should invest early. You know you should build skills before you need the income they generate. You know you should start the business instead of planning it. You know you should build a network before you need it. You know these things with varying degrees of clarity, and you have known them for longer than you are comfortable admitting. The problem is not ignorance. The financial education industry has spent decades solving the wrong problem, assuming that people fail because they lack information. When the actual failure is almost always something different, people know what to do and wait. They wait for more money. They wait for better timing. They wait for clearer direction, for reduced risk, for conditions that arrange themselves into something that finally feels like permission to begin. And waiting in the mathematics of wealth is not neutral. It is not the absence of a decision. It is the decision to pay compound interest on delay instead of collecting it on action, and compound interest in either direction does not pause to ask why you haven't started. The problem is not that people do not know these moves. The problem is that they know them and wait. And in wealth building, waiting is not the absence of a decision. It is the decision to pay compound interest on delay instead of collecting it on action. 7 moves. Known by most. Made on time by few. The difference between the people who build wealth and the people who understand wealth is not information. It is the date on which action replaced intention. The timing architecture, why late is not wrong but early is irreplaceable. Before the moves themselves, the framework that makes timing the primary variable must be established, because without it, these 7 moves read as conventional advice. And conventional advice does not explain why people who receive it consistently fail to act on it in time. Compound interest is a mathematical phenomenon that most people understand intellectually, and almost no one internalizes emotionally. The emotional failure is not stupidity. It is the documented inability of the human brain to viscerally feel exponential growth before experiencing it. Exponential curves look flat at the beginning. They feel like nothing is happening. The person who abandons the compound process during the flat part does not feel like they are making a mistake. They feel like they are being realistic about a strategy that is not working. The numbers do not care about that feeling. $10,000 invested at age 25 versus $10,000 invested at age 35 at 8% annual return produces at age 65 approximately $217,000 versus $100,000. Same money, same return rate, 10 years difference. More than double the outcome. The decade does not feel significant when you are 25 and $10,000 feels large. The decade feels catastrophic when you are 65 and $117,000 is the price of the delay. Extend this structure beyond investment to every domain in which value accumulates over time. The skill built early compounds into expertise that commands premium pricing. The network built early compounds into relationships that open doors without requiring a knock. The business started early, compounds iteration cycles that produce refinement unavailable to the person who began 10 years later with a better initial idea. Everything that compounds rewards early and penalizes late, without apology, without exception, without negotiation. 2 people encounter the same move at the same moment. One acts and collects the compound. One waits for better conditions and eventually acts at higher cost for lower return. An external observer cannot distinguish them on day one. A decade later, the difference between them is structural and cannot be closed by effort alone. Because effort cannot purchase the time that compound interest required and did not receive. Late is not wrong. Early is irreplaceable. The distance between those 2 words is measured in compound interest, and compound interest does not offer refunds. Move 1. Invest before you feel ready. The feeling of readiness never arrives. This is not pessimism. It is the observable behavior of a psychological horizon that moves forward as you approach it. Readiness requires more income, more knowledge, more certainty about the market, more clarity about goals. And all of these conditions improve marginally as time passes, while none of them cross a threshold that triggers action without deliberate intervention from the person waiting for them. What actually happens structurally during the waiting, the market continues. Every year of waiting is a year in which capital that could have been compounding was instead sitting in forms that lose value to inflation, not stagnant, moving backward. The person who waits 5 years for readiness before investing does not begin from neutral. They begin from a position eroded by 5 years of inflation applied to uninvested capital. The misunderstanding that drives the delay is the belief that investment requires certainty. It requires nothing of the kind. It requires only the commitment of capital to vehicles that have historically produced positive returns over relevant time horizons. Uncertainty is permanently present. It was present yesterday, it is present today, and it will be present on every future date that currently feels like it might be the right moment to start. The question is not whether uncertainty exists. The question is whether you participate in returns despite it or sit outside them because of it. Here is the paradox that nobody discusses. The people who delay longest are often the people who know the most about investing. Knowledge produces analysis paralysis, while ignorance produces action. The person who knows nothing about market mechanics invests simply and early. The person who knows everything about market risk waits for conditions that never arrive. The difference in outcome over 30 years favors the person who knew less and acted sooner. The market does not wait for you to feel ready. It compounds for those inside it and inflates past those outside it. Readiness is not a precondition for investing. It is a story told by people who have not yet decided that their future matters more than their comfort. You will never feel ready. The market does not care. Every year you wait for the feeling the math works against you without pausing to ask why you haven't started. Move 2. Build the skill before you need the income. Skills built under financial pressure are built badly. When income is urgent, learning is compressed, application is forced, and feedback loops are truncated. The result is a person with urgently acquired competence, sufficient to get the job, insufficient to command the price. Skills built without financial pressure are built for depth. Learning can be pursued past the point of basic competence. Application can be experimental rather than desperate. Feedback can be sought rather than avoided. The timing structure of skill investment makes this distinction financially decisive. A skill built at 25 has 40 years to compound through application. Every year of application produces results, and results produce reputation, and reputation produces better opportunities to apply the skill, and better opportunities produce higher quality results. Each cycle of this sequence strengthens the asset. A skill built at 45 has 20 years of the same sequence. The compound math does not produce half the value, it produces dramatically less. Because early years of skill application generate the network, reputation, and opportunity substrate that makes later years of application disproportionately productive. The delay is driven by an inverted logic that feels like wisdom. Skill investment is most justified when current income is insufficient to motivate it. This is backwards. Skill investment is most valuable precisely when current income is sufficient, because that is the only condition under which skill can be built for depth rather than urgency. The person who invests in skills from a position of stability builds something that will serve them for decades. The person who invests in skills from a position of necessity builds something that will serve the immediate crisis. The skill you build when you need it is the skill that gets you the job. The skill you build before you need it is the skill that gives you the career. The skill you build a decade before you need it is the skill that becomes your identity in the market, the thing people come to you for before you advertise, the thing that defines your price instead of accepting the market's offer. Build the skill before the urgency. Urgency produces competence. Depth produces compounding. Only one of those builds wealth. Move 3. Start the business before the perfect idea arrives. The perfect idea is a myth generated by a false belief about how business success actually works. Most successful businesses are not the first version of the idea they started with. They are the evolved version of an imperfect starting point, iterated upon through direct market contact that could not have been obtained any other way than starting. The idea does not improve through thinking. It improves through building, failing, adjusting, and building again. What starting early actually provides is iteration time, and iteration time is the primary scarce resource in business development. The person who starts an imperfect business at 25 has by 35 either built something significant or learned lessons available no other way, and still has an entire career ahead to apply them. The person who waits until 35 for the perfect idea starts at the same point but with a decade less iteration, time, and usually substantially more lifestyle obligations that make early-stage sacrifice harder to sustain. The specific compound that starting provides extends beyond financial. Operational competence, risk tolerance calibrated to reality rather than imagination, market understanding that cannot be gained from the outside, a network of people with skin in similar games. All of these accumulate through doing and cannot accumulate through planning. Each year of planning produces 0 of these assets. Each year of operating produces all of them. What people wait for is the idea that feels certain enough to justify the risk. But certainty about a business idea is available only through market testing, which requires starting. Waiting for certainty before starting is waiting for information that is only available after the action. The waiting is designed to replace. The perfect idea never arrives. The adequate idea started early and iterated relentlessly becomes perfect through contact with reality. One exists in your head and compounds nothing. The other exists in the market and compounds everything. Start with what you have. The idea improves through execution, not through waiting for the version of it that feels safe enough to begin. Move 4. Build the network before you need it. A network requested in urgency has fundamentally different value from a network built over time, and the difference is not subtle. The person who reaches out when they need something is attempting to extract from relationship capital they may or may not have deposited. The person who has been building relationships for years before any specific need is drawing from an account that has been accumulating interest in both directions. Their awareness of others and others' awareness of them. The compound structure of network operates through a specific mechanism, depth of relationship, not breadth of contact. A person known for 10 years with a consistent track record has a relationship density that a person known for 10 months cannot replicate, regardless of intensity. Deep relationships open doors that surface relationships cannot, because trust is non-transferable and cannot be compressed into shorter timelines, no matter how impressive any single interaction is. The specific thing that compounds in a network over time is distributed awareness of your capability. A network is not a list of contacts. It is the accumulation of other people's understanding of what you can do and what you can be trusted for. This understanding builds through repeated interaction, through seeing you perform under different conditions, through the specific credibility that comes from consistent behavior across time. It cannot be established in a single meeting, a single event, or a single impressive performance. It requires time, and it requires that time to begin before the need for it arrives. Build the network before the job search. Build the network before the fundraise. Build the network before the business launch. Build the network before the pivot. Build it in the time when building it is easy and using it is unnecessary, because that is the only time it builds correctly. The network you need tomorrow must be built today. The network built today must have been started yesterday. There is no version of this that doesn't require being further ahead than you currently are. Move 5. Negotiate every compensation every time. Salary negotiation has an unusual compound structure that makes a single, unnegotiated conversation one of the most financially expensive decisions in a person's career, without it feeling like a decision at all. Every unnegotiated dollar is not a one-time loss. It is a permanent deficit that compounds forward through every raise, calculated as a percentage of a lower base, through every subsequent salary anchor set by the previous one, through every benefit tied to compensation level across decades of employment. The calculation is not abstract. A $5,000 salary gap at career start compounding through 3% annual raises for 30 years produces a cumulative income difference that exceeds $250,000. One conversation avoided, once at the beginning of a career, with a cost most people would describe as temporary discomfort and a financial consequence that persists for 3 decades. What people wait for is the moment they have enough leverage to justify asking. This moment is perpetually deferred because leverage does not arrive as a gift, it is claimed through the act of negotiating. The person who negotiates from a position of apparent weakness develops the negotiation skill that makes the next conversation more effective. The person who waits for a strong position to negotiate never develops the skill and arrives at the strong position no better equipped to use it. The broader application extends past salary. Every financial term in every agreement is negotiable. Contract structures, vendor prices, service agreements, equity splits, payment terms. People who do not negotiate accept default terms set by parties whose interests are not aligned with theirs, and default terms are never designed for the benefit of the person accepting them. Every salary you accept without negotiation is a salary you set for everyone who negotiates after you at that company. You trained the market to pay you less, then you wonder why you are paid less. Negotiation is not aggression. It is the decision that your financial future is worth the momentary discomfort of asking for what it requires. Move 6. Protect the downside before the upside exists. Insurance, legal structures, liability protection, estate planning, these are moves people make after they have assets to protect. This sequencing is backwards and costly in 2 specific ways that most people never calculate. The first, cost catastrophic financial events do not wait for assets to exist before materializing. A single health crisis without coverage, a single lawsuit without entity structure, a single unprotected asset lost to a creditor. Any of these can reset a person to a genuinely negative starting position. Recovery from negative territory takes longer than building from zero, because the compound growth that would have occurred during the recovery period is instead spent closing a gap that protection would have prevented. The person who experiences one catastrophic unprotected event at 35 may not recover to their pre-event position until 45, losing a compound decade entirely. The second, cost protection structures are cheaper to build before assets exist than after. The entity structure that costs $500 to create in advance costs substantially more to retrofit around existing assets and relationships. The insurance that is straightforward to obtain before a health event is unavailable or dramatically more expensive after one. The psychological reason for delay is the invisibility of protection when it works. Nobody feels the lawsuit that entity structure prevented. Nobody sees the medical debt that insurance eliminated. The absence of catastrophe does not feel like protection working. It feels like protection being unnecessary. This perception systematically produces underinvestment in protection until the event that makes the underinvestment visible arrives, at which point it is too late. The entity structure that costs $500 protects assets worth $500,000. The insurance policy that costs $200 per month eliminates the medical debt that would cost $200,000. The will that costs $1,000 to draft prevents the family conflict that costs $100,000 in legal fees. None of these feel necessary until the moment they are indispensable. Protecting the downside before the upside exists is not pessimism. It is the decision that the upside you are building will not be erased by a risk you could have addressed for a fraction of its cost. Move 7. Redefine your relationship with money before your income peaks. The first 6 moves are tactical. This one is architectural, the cognitive foundation without which all other moves eventually fail. The layer beneath the layer that most financial advice never reaches. The relationship most people have with money was built in childhood from environments of scarcity, anxiety, avoidance, or dysfunctional abundance. It was not chosen. It was installed the way language is installed, before the person had the conceptual framework to evaluate what was being given to them, and it runs as an operating system beneath every financial decision, distorting analysis that should be rational into responses that are emotional, producing outcomes that contradict the person's stated intentions without their recognizing why. Specific distortions that late relationship work causes the person who inherits a scarcity relationship spends windfalls unconsciously, restoring the familiar scarcity that their nervous system has been calibrated to. The person who inherits a financial anxiety relationship avoids financial decisions rather than making them, letting avoidance compound into worse positions while feeling virtuous about not gambling. The person who inherits a money-corrupts narrative undermines their own wealth building in ways they cannot see because the sabotage runs beneath the level of conscious decision-making. The timing matters because peak income years are when the largest financial decisions are made. The person who has not done relationship work before peak income arrives makes the largest decisions from the most distorted psychological state. The result is predictable. Lifestyle inflation consumes peak income years. Investment paralysis occurs during the highest capital period. Risk aversion prevents deployment of the largest available resources. The window during which the most capital is available and the least structural pressure exists is the window during which the unexamined relationship with money produces the most damage. This is the move people make latest, usually triggered by financial crisis rather than deliberate choice. Crisis-triggered relationship work is better than none. Pre-crisis. Deliberate relationship work allows peak income to be deployed by a person who understands their own psychology well enough to work with it rather than unknowingly against it. You do not have a money problem. You have a relationship with money problem. And relationship problems do not resolve themselves, they compound. Fix the strategy without fixing the relationship and you will execute good tactics in service of bad psychology. Fix the relationship first and every tactic works better. Machiavelli's clock. What the prince knew about timing and delay. Machiavelli did not write extensively about patience. He wrote about windows. And the distinction between those two subjects is the entire argument of this essay in compressed form. Every observation he made about power was rooted in a single premise. Opportunity has a duration, and the person who recognizes an open window and acts is the person who shapes outcomes. The person who recognizes an open window and waits to prepare more thoroughly typically finds the window closed when they return. He was not writing metaphor. He was documenting a pattern he had observed across enough courts, enough campaigns, enough political upheavals to be confident that it was structural rather than situational. His most direct statement on timing contains 4 words: occasions do not wait, no qualification, no caveat about readiness, no acknowledgement of the legitimate reasons a person might need more time. Occasions do not wait. And the person who operates from the assumption that they do is working from a false model of how opportunity actually behaves. He documented this pattern across every prince he studied. The failures were rarely people who made the wrong move. They were people who made the right move after the window for it had closed. The alliance formed after the enemy had consolidated. The reform implemented after the resentment had crystallized. The investment in loyalty made after the betrayal had already been decided. Timing of the move determined the outcome of the move, not the quality of the move in isolation. Cesare Borgia, the figure Machiavelli examined most carefully and most admiringly, was not the most brilliant tactical strategist of his era. What distinguished him was the speed of execution when a window opened. He did not wait to consolidate one position before taking the next step. He acted when the moment permitted action because he understood with rare clarity that moments do not courteously announce their expiration. The window that exists today is not guaranteed tomorrow. The move that would have transformed a position last year may only consolidate it this year and accomplish nothing next year. The connection to the 7 moves is direct. Each of these moves has a window, a period in which the time available multiplied by the resources that can be redirected, multiplied by the compound potential remaining, produces the maximum impact. Investing before ready, the window is widest in the 20s and 30s. Not because investing is easier then, but because the compound time available is maximized. Starting the business before the perfect idea, the window is widest when obligations are fewest, not because ideas are better then, but because the resilience capacity for early-stage failure is highest. Building the network before it is needed, the window is open continuously, but its compound value diminishes every year. It goes unused. The person who waits for conditions to be right before making these moves is the person Machiavelli watched wait for the moment to consolidate before expanding, and miss both the consolidation and the expansion while waiting for conditions that were never going to arrange themselves as neatly as imagined. He also documented the opposite pattern with equal precision, the princes who acted from imperfect positions with incomplete resources without waiting for certainty, and built from those imperfect starting points because they understood that an imperfect position in an open window beats a perfect position in a closed window with mathematical consistency. This is not an argument for recklessness. It is an argument for timing, awareness, the specific, cultivated ability to distinguish between genuine unreadiness and comfortable avoidance dressed as preparation. One observation from the prince that is rarely quoted but most directly relevant to this argument: he wrote that injury when necessary must be done all at once. Not in the context of ruthlessness, in the context of timing. Action taken decisively when the window is open produces fundamentally different outcomes than the same action taken gradually as comfort allows. The person who invests slowly starts tentatively, negotiates apologetically, builds a network. Occasionally they are making the right moves at the wrong pace. Pace is a form of timing. Wrong pace is wrong timing. Machiavelli never wrote about compound interest. He wrote about something more fundamental: the cost of waiting for conditions that occasions are not obligated to wait for. The math changes across centuries. The human tendency to defer does not. The waiting room, two psychological mechanisms that keep people in delay. The 7 moves are not kept from people by ignorance. They are kept from people by 2 psychological mechanisms, so consistent and so effective that they function almost as designed. If the design were to prevent action rather than enable it. The first mechanism is conditional permission. Conditional permission is the pattern in which people grant themselves the right to make a move only after a specific condition is met. I will invest when I have more saved. I will start the business when the idea is better. I will negotiate when I have more leverage. I will build the network when I have something to offer. The conditions are real. They are not fabricated by a lazy mind looking for excuses. They represent genuine current limitations. The problem is that each condition is self-reinforcing in a way that makes it permanently available as justification for delay. More savings come from investing behavior, not from waiting to invest. Better ideas come from starting and iterating, not from waiting for the version of the idea that feels safer. More leverage comes from negotiating, not from waiting for leverage to arrive as a gift. Something to offer comes from building, not from waiting to have it before beginning. Each condition requires the action it is conditioning on. Conditional permission is a closed loop, waiting for X, that requires doing Y while waiting for X to do Y. The loop is only broken by acting before the condition is met, which is precisely what the condition was constructed to prevent. The condition will not be met by waiting. The condition will be met by acting, and the action will simultaneously meet the condition and render it irrelevant. The second mechanism is the arrival fallacy. The arrival fallacy is the belief that a future state will be qualitatively different from the present state in ways that make the move easier then than now. When I make more money, I will have less financial anxiety and better perspective for investment decisions. When the business is more established, I will have clearer sense of which skills to build. When I am more senior, I will have the confidence to negotiate. The fallacy is in the assumption about what changes between now and then. Future states are extrapolations of present states with different numbers, not different psychology, not different cognitive patterns, not different emotional relationships with risk and discomfort. The person with financial anxiety at $50,000 annual income has financial anxiety at $150,000. The anxiety is not caused by the income level. The person without business clarity at the startup stage does not gain clarity at the growth stage. Clarity comes from operating, not from operating more. The move that seems easier to make later is not easier later. It is differently difficult, often more difficult, because later brings more obligations, more lifestyle commitments, more identity investment in the current state, more people whose expectations must be managed through the transition. The window for making these moves with minimum friction is early before these accumulations occur. That friction does not decrease with time, it increases. The future version of you will not find this easier. They will find different obstacles of similar or greater magnitude. Act from where you are, because where you are now is the lowest friction version of the conditions you will ever have for most of these moves. The waiting room is the most expensive room in most financial lives. Entry is free. Exit requires only the decision that now is always a better starting point than the later that never arrives as promised. The waiting room is comfortable, familiar, and has never produced anything that compounds. Its most dangerous feature is that it looks exactly like preparation. The cost, Calculatin, what delay actually costs. The moves above have been described in structural terms. They can also be described in numerical terms, and the numbers, once seen clearly, make the cost of the waiting room impossible to describe as prudent. On move 1, the investment move, $500 per month, invested from age 25 versus age 35 at 8%. Annual return produces at age 65 a difference of approximately $700,000. The 10-year delay does not cost 10 years of growth. It costs more than 2/3 of the terminal wealth. This is not a worst-case calculation. It assumes a modest monthly amount and a historically reasonable return rate. On move 2, the skill-building move, a skill that takes 2 years to develop and produces $20,000 per year in additional earning capacity. Started at 25, generates $800,000 in additional cumulative income by 65. Started at 45, it generates $400,000. Same skill, same development time, same annual premium, half the lifetime return because the compound of application across years was not available. On move 5, the negotiation move, a $5,000 salary gap at career start, compounding through 3% annual raises for 30 years, produces a cumulative income difference exceeding $250,000. One conversation not had at the beginning of a career carries a financial consequence that most people, if they saw it calculated clearly, would describe not as an avoided discomfort but as an unrecognized catastrophe. The cost of not investing is not zero, it is every compound return on every dollar that sat uninvested. The cost of not negotiating is not zero, it is every raise, calculated from a lower base for the remainder of the career. The cost of not starting is not zero, it is every iteration cycle that could not begin because the first version was not yet running. The cost of waiting is always positive, and compound interest ensures it grows larger with every year it goes uncalculated. Delay has a price. Most people do not know the exact price because they have not calculated it. If they calculated it, they would stop calling delay prudent and start calling it what it is, the most expensive habit in their financial life. The cost of these 7 delays compounded across a career is not a number most people have ever confronted. It is also the number they are paying whether or not they have confronted it. The moves are not the point. The timing is. This essay was not about 7 moves. The person reading this knew the moves before arriving at the first paragraph. They have known them in various forms from various sources for varying lengths of time. This essay was about one variable when and one observation. Every year that variable is treated as flexible when it is mathematically fixed, is a year of compound growth subtracted from the final number. Every year that I will do this, when conditions are right, replaces I will do this now is a year that the market, the skill, compound, the business iteration, the network depth, and the negotiation muscle all fail to accumulate because the person who would have built them was waiting in a room that does not produce anything. Some people reading this have genuine constraints that make immediate action on some of these moves genuinely impossible. Genuine constraints are real. They are also fewer than assumed constraints. And assumed constraints are the version that conditional permission and the arrival fallacy manufacture from ordinary uncertainty rather than actual impossibility. The distance between what is genuinely impossible and what is merely uncomfortable is for most people the primary unexplored territory in their financial life. The moves are available now. The windows are open now. The conditions are imperfect now, and they will be imperfect later, differently imperfect, with the compound cost of the intervening years added to the price of entry. The person who makes these moves under imperfect conditions arrives somewhere. The person who waits for perfect conditions stays in the waiting room, which is comfortable, which is familiar, and which has never produced anything that compounds. 7 moves. Known by most, made on time by few. The difference is not courage. The difference is not information. The difference is the date. The specific date on which action replaced the intention that had been accumulating interest against the person holding it for every year. It remained an intention. That date can be today. It cannot be made earlier than today, but it can be made later. And later, as always, is more expensive than it looks.